app for their long-term care product. We think it's a fantastic system. If you haven't taken advantage of it, hopefully by the end of today's webinar, you'll get excited enough to go out there and start playing with it and find a way to fit it into your practice. It does make your life a heck of a lot easier. We'll begin here in about a minute. Couple of housekeeping things here before we get going. Everybody is in a listen-only mode because I will be recording this session, and we will be unmuting everybody toward the end of the webinar for open Q&A. However, if you do have questions along the way, in the toolbar on the right-hand side of your screen is a question feature. Feel free to type in a question you may have, and Mike will do his level best to keep up with those along the way. If the question is important enough for the whole crowd to hear the answer, Mike will interrupt me and we'll address it in front of everyone. Otherwise, you can hold off your questions to the end when we do unmute everybody to pepper us away with any questions that you may have about the electronic app or the process. Also, in the toolbar on the right-hand side of your screen, there's a small section labeled Handouts. We've loaded up there the PDF of an FAQ around the e-app for Mutual of Omaha, and along with their Quick Start user guide PDF. You can feel free to grab those and save them on your desktop for future reference, but they're there for the taking. So please feel free to grab those tools anytime along the way during the webinar. So again, thanks everybody for joining Mike and I this morning. This is Dave Whalen on the marketing staff here at American Independent Marketing. Today we thought we'd spend some time walking you through how to take advantage of Mutual of Omaha's electronic app they launched for their long-term care product here almost 2 years ago. We've seen the use of this e-app grow steadily over time. The agents who use it love it, and it does aid you from many things, like having to hop in a car and drive over to an appointment that maybe it might be a couple 3-hour drive. To take an application, you can do it all over the phone, and especially with some technologies now like Join Me, which you can get for free, and you can do a screen share session and have your client join you on your own screen, and you can go through and fill out an application together and then go through the signature process as well. So the first thing you need to do, if you haven't already done so, is you need to establish an account on Mutual of Omaha's website. And it's simply going to mutualofomaha.com. And when you go to mutualofomaha.com, the first screen you'll be presented with is the one I have on my screen right now. It's their homepage. And in this particular area right here is where you're going to establish a login, or if you already have a login, that's where you go to login. It now defaults to read Select Account, and when you hit the down arrow, it presents a menu of which you will select, as you are, Sales Professionals, and then hit Login. Now, I've already logged on once this morning, so it's not going to take me to the login screen. But if you haven't set up a login, it'll take you to a screen where you're prompted to type in a username and a password. Right below that box is a hyperlink to sign up with Mutual of Omaha and establish an account. And when you do click on that hyperlink, there are some agreements you have to read, and it's going to ask you for your registration key. And your registration key is your writing number with Mutual of Omaha. If you don't have that handy, give us a call. We can give it to you, and you can establish your login. But once you do log in to Mutual site, you'll be taken to what Mutual will refer to as Sales Professional Access. And this is their website that's built just for people like you in the field. And on the very first screen you come to, under Sales Tools on the left-hand side, you'll see the very first item there in that menu is Electronic Applications. So when I click on that, it's going to take me to the next step, which is viewing where the electronic apps are. The first one that is presented to you is the MedSup, and then you have the long-term care, and then you have the e-app for their newer DI product called Priority Income Protection. And when you get to the long-term care e-app, choices here. There are two buttons here. There are reference materials here, FAQ, the quick start guide, which we have over on the toolbar for you. There's actually a PowerPoint training you can go through if you want. And then you have the actual e-app and the sandbox. And the sandbox is where you can go play and get a feel for the flow all the way through and including the signature process so that you can feel more comfortable as far as working on a real app when you're working with a client. Strongly encourage you to spend as much time as you wish in the sandbox playing with the application. And what Mutual has done, at least for me anyway, I have access to a test site for the e-app. So I've actually gone up there and have built an e-app that I'll be walking you through. But when you first go to the electronic application, it's going to take you to a screen that looks a lot like this. There'll be a list of all the applications that you've been working on. And don't worry about this area filling up, because what happens here is that if you have applications that haven't gone anywhere for whatever reason, they show as incomplete. They'll drop off after 30 days. Any apps that you do submit to Mutual will stay on the screen so you can keep track of the business you have submitted. This is just a different way to keep track of who all you have in the hopper. It won't give you a status of an application once it's been submitted. There's another area of Mutual's website that you can go and view status of an application during the underwriting process. So the application I started this morning is for Joe Cool. And it shows that the current status is incomplete. So I want to edit the application to figure out where I've gone wrong. But I'm going to walk you through each section of the application so you can get a feel for what happens depending upon how you answer the questions on the application. So bear with me a second here. So it's going to present you an application that looks very similar to the paper application, but there's some nifty things they've done here that won't clutter up your screen with questions that are not applicable based upon your clients answering of the questions. The first section it comes to is the personal worksheet. And right here on the second area, you have a choice of, I choose not to complete the information in the personal worksheet, which is the right your client has, or you can answer all the questions. So if I click, I'm going to answer all the questions, it will present all the questions that need to be answered. But if I elect not to disclose my finances to Mutual, then I'm not busy with all the clutter of those questions. Section A of the application, just like the paper app, is general information. This is where you're typing in if you're doing a single application. I can also put on here, it's a piece of new business, it's not a reinstatement. If you were enrolling somebody who's a member of a sponsored group or an association that's approved by Mutual, you can select the button there. If you worked with the Common Employer Program with Mutual, you would push that button as well. Or if you're writing an application on yourself, you let the company know that this is an application for a producer. So I've completed the information about my client, the name, their address, phone number, best time to call. If you don't put any information in the best time to call, that's perfectly fine. Otherwise, the company will just reach out at an arbitrary time to call you. This is also where you should put in the email address for your client. And I'm going to give you an example of where you might not want to put the email address in for your client. Tomorrow, March 1st, Mutual of Omaha is implementing a new process for achieving medical records that you may or may not want to take advantage of. In the cases where Mutual of Omaha requires a special authorization, an example would be Kaiser Permanente in California, Mutual is no longer going to send that authorization to you to send to your client to have it signed. They're going to send it directly to your client to sign online and return back to Mutual of Omaha. And they'll actually have 3 different ways to get it signed and returned. They'll be presented with a link they click on that will take them up to an electronic version of that special auth. And if they're on an iPad, they can use their finger to sign it. If they're on a regular desktop, you use your mouse to sign a script signature of your signature and then hit submit back to Mutual. You do have the option, they also attach a PDF of that same authorization to your client. They have an option of printing it, signing it, and either scanning and emailing it back or faxing it back, and they provide both the email address and the fax number where it needs to be returned. If you do not want Mutual of Omaha to contact your client directly via email to get a special authorization, do not provide them with the email address of your client, which I just typed in my email address here. Simply by leaving that blank, it will make Mutual of Omaha revert to how they currently do special authorizations, which is to route that request through you. So this section is now all complete. You can see I haven't filled in every box, but these boxes are strictly optional. They're not required to move on through the application. Section B is just like the paper app. This is the allowances page, where basically if you say I have a partner, then it opens up more questions for you to answer. If I am a member of an approved association that I've set up, it will then present you the boxes that need to be completed for that association discount. Or if I had set up a common employer program, this is where you would fill in the information about that, the group number if available, the group name, and the employment date. Again, so it's all in a matter of how you answer the health questions as to what additional questions may be thrown on the screen for you to complete before you can move forward. The replacement coverage page is just like the paper app, where they're asking you if you have another policy you're basically going to be replacing with this one. The last question on this page, what's oftentimes is missed, because it's kind of down at the bottom of the paper app, is if your client has ever been declined or denied reinstatement in the past. If you say yes, then you'll be presented with a window to type in information about the reasons why that person was declined. And now we get into the health questions. Section D as in dog, these are the critical questions. I'm going to spend a couple of minutes here going through a few details on this. Any yeses on this page, you are unable to go forward with an application for long-term care insurance with Mutual of Omaha. The first question on this section is the most important, and there's a lot of information around that question. Mutual of Omaha requires any applicant who is 65 years old or older to have had a complete head-to-toe physical with a complete metabolic panel. Even though the application says basic metabolic panel, they want a complete metabolic panel. Any doctor knows what the difference is between those two within the last 2 years. If they have not had a physical with blood work in the last 24 months, they cannot apply with Mutual at all. So if your clients are 65 years old or older and haven't had a physical, tell them to go get one before they start the application process. If your clients are under the age of 65, Mutual of Omaha requires them to have been to a doctor's office for any reason within the last 2 years. So for a head cold, flu, sliver in their finger, any particular reason why they may have gone to a doctor, they have to have had a doctor's visit in the last 24 months also to apply for coverage. If your clients haven't, then strongly urge your client to go ahead and get a physical with blood work, so that chart note will be available for Mutual to pull when they order medical records on your client. That's a key starting point for applying for coverage with Mutual of Omaha. It catches a lot of people by surprise that requirement is there, but they're pretty firm on the fact that they want you either to have had a physical or had at least seen a doctor in the last 2 years in order to apply for coverage. The other questions are standard knockout questions that would usually point to somebody who is already currently on a claim or has a health condition that is going to be clearly uninsurable with Mutual and more than likely most every other long-term care carrier out there. You then complete the information about who your primary care physician is, and you let the company know for example, if you're on any medication. So if I say yes to the medication, it will then open up some additional information I need to complete. The name, the dosage, how often, how long have you been on it, all that kind of good stuff. Who was it prescribed by? Was it prescribed by your primary care? If no, then it will probably bring up another window where you provide the physician name who prescribed that medication for you. And if you're on more than one medication, you click this box, it'll bring up another window where you type in the information on that medication. So as many or as few medications you're on, I think there's a limit of 10 on the application itself, you can type in on the e-app. But again, if you're not on any medication, it's not going to clutter up your screen. I also want to point out one other thing here too. In the table of contents, you can hop from section to section of the application just by merely clicking on that item on the table of contents. And if the area or that section is highlighted in yellow, it means that you have not completed that section where you may have forgot to answer a question or maybe you forgot to type in a medication or whatever. So once the table of contents is clear, like mine is, the application is basically complete and ready to be signed. So I missed this question on purpose just to show you that. These are all questions that if you answer yes to, you are still potentially insurable. If you do say yes to one of these questions, it will bring up a blank where they want you to type in the details behind the reason why you said yes. Section H is the last part of the health history, and I want to draw your attention to the very first question here as well. It's the family history question on a cognitive issue. If your client says yes to this question, like say their father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it's not a knockout. It will just, there'll be a limitation on what you can buy, and the limitation is you can't buy longer than a 5-year plan. That's the only limitation that shows up there, and you will also not be qualified to be offered a preferred rate class. So you'll be select at best in a 5-year plan length. And again, if you say yes to any of these, it's going to bring up a window for you to explain why. For example, here you go. Why did you say yes? Then you get to the benefit selections pages. This is two sections of a regular paper application, sections I and J. Section I of the paper app is for the Mutual Care Secure product. Section J is for the Mutual Care Custom. Here on the e-app, you just select which one you have sold your client or they want to apply for, and it's only going to present you with the benefit selection information that you need to complete for that particular policy, whether it be the secure or the custom. So I did select custom, and I've typed in my monthly benefit, my policy limit I want to use. I'm rejecting the 5% compound. I'm selecting 3% compound. I'm buying lifetime, so I don't select any of these. I'm saying no to the non-forfeiture. And if you don't understand what that non-forfeiture is, give us a call. You have to be able to explain it because your client needs to reject the offer on the application. Remember, you can reduce the assisted living or the home health care. The application defaults to a 90-day elimination period unless you select something different on the application itself. I elected to buy the waiver of the elimination period for home health care and any other applicable riders you wish to purchase. If I try to select, well, it does. I'll be darned. You have to be a married couple to get obviously any of the partner benefits. And then section K is the premium information page. This is a pretty important page because you're telling Mutual a lot of information on this page, even though it's a single page. The first thing you're going to tell Mutual is, do you want to have conditional insurance coverage? In other words, are you collecting premium with the application, and which would require you to then complete and give your client a temporary insurance agreement and or a conditional receipt, whichever is applicable in your state. If I am not requesting conditional insurance, I'm only offered the ability to select the date of policy issue as the effective date, even if I do collect premium. If I do say yes to the conditional insurance, then I'm offered two choices here, the date of the application for the effective date or the date of issue. Mutual does have the ability to draft the initial premium you wish to collect from your client. We always think it's a great idea, strongly recommend that you always try to collect premium with the application. It shows better commitment on behalf of your client. Mutual will tell you that also the placement rate for policies that had a down payment is higher than doing business COD. So we strongly recommend you collect at least 1 month's premium, if not 2. If your client is going to pay annually, you don't have to collect the full annual. If you don't, there'll just be a balance that you need to collect upon delivery. So you tell the company what amount of money the check is going to be for. If I want Mutual to draft that, then I'll present it at the bottom of the page with information about to fill in the banking information and what day of the month I want that premium pulled from my account. Or on the initial premium, I could say pull it out of my account this one time and one time only, because on a going forward basis, I'm going to pay annually. So a lot of flexibility in this page, but you just need to be careful going through this page to tell the company exactly what you're trying to accomplish when this application is submitted to them. The protection against unintentional lapse, that's what we call the third-party notification area. I strongly suggest that your client does designate someone, especially if they're paying any mode beyond monthly. It basically doubles the grace period for them to get a payment in before the policy would lapse for non-payment. And that you can change your designated person on the fly whenever you wish, just by making a simple phone call to customer service at Mutual of Omaha. This is the agreements acknowledgement page. You'll notice that all the boilerplate language is not showing up on the e-app. It's just presenting you enough information where you can intelligently answer the question. When you actually go to sign the application, it will bring the real app for you. So you'll see everything that's on our normal application that is submitted. So discreetly hidden on this particular page, though, is right below where you type in the city and state where the application was signed. There's a little box here you can check. Does the applicant request to fill out an authorization for release for information to my insurance agent? This is the agent-specific HIPAA form. We strongly recommend that you have your client sign the agent HIPAA form because that allows you to have an open conversation with the underwriter during and after the underwriting process has been completed. That way, if your client has been rated up, say from select to class 1, or deny coverage, the underwriter can have a very open conversation with you as to the reasons for the rate up or the reasons for the decline. Where this form is not signed and the information or the reasons behind the decline was not information that was disclosed on the application, maybe it came up during a phone interview or from medical records, underwriting cannot tell you anything about the details. And they can't even tell us about the details without this form being on file. Here's the HIPAA form for Mutual of Omaha to grab records from their doctor. It's not the HIPAA form for you. We already set that one up. And when I go through the signature process, you'll see that the e-signature looks a little bit different on this particular form. It's actually a script signature. Most facilities have been accepting that. However, there have been quite a few cases where the facility will not accept an electronic signature. They require a wet signature. So you may get a request every so often from underwriting to have your client sign a regular HIPAA form. That's just a matter of grabbing that page out of a hard copy app or print that page off a PDF of the application and have your client do a wet signature on that particular HIPAA form. And the last section that needs to be completed is all about you. It's the producer statement. where you tell the company that, yeah, I actually recorded all the answers. And if I did not do the application in person, which is perfectly fine, you just tell them what you did. And I just typed in here remote sales. I did a join me session. Is the application for myself? No. What rate class did I quote? And to the best of my knowledge, this is not a replacement. And then if you want to, if you're splitting business with another producer, then you would tell mutual yes here. It would bring up additional blanks, and you tell the company what % your split is. And if you have an office assistant that you want to have bird dog and receive any communication from mutual during the underwriting process, you don't want it to come to you because you don't check your email very often, then you can designate somebody else to receive information about this particular case. And once, it doesn't mean that all cases require this, only if you want, and it's done case by case. So if you want to stay in personal touch on a particular case, then just don't designate a third party. Otherwise, just it's your choice to do that or not. So I've completed the application. Nothing's highlighted in yellow. So I'm going to save it and exit. And now a new button appears on this magic window called Request Signatures. There are two ways that you can get the signatures from your client. If you're doing a Join Me session, you can go right to the signature process with your client online with you, pass the mouse control to your client. It's a feature available in Join Me, and have your client click through and sign. Or you can email the link to the signature process to your client. Say they've run out of time, but they'll have time later to jump on the application and sign it. So you click on email here, and your client will be sent an email. It will come from you. It'll have your name on it. It'll have like joe.cool. And if you're at yahoo.com, it's not going to come from yahoo.com. It's going to come from paperlesssolutionsgroup.com. But it will have your name on the front end of it. So your client should recognize it. And when they click on that email, it will take them to a link, a hyperlink, that they'll click on. They'll have to answer a couple of security questions so the mutual knows that, yes, this is indeed the person who has filled out this application. It might ask for date of birth. They may ask for the last four of the SOCH or whatever. If they mix the questions up, and then they can proceed to the signature process. I'm going to go through as if the client was on the screen with me and click through and sign with them. So the first window you're presented with, you'll see that the sign button is grayed out. I get a lot of phone calls from agents saying my client can't sign the app. They get the email from me, but when they click on sign application, nothing happens because it's grayed out. That's because they haven't done a couple of very important steps prior to being able to sign the app. There are two hyperlinks that are presented in this window: important documents and the electronic signature consent document. Each of these links need to be clicked on before you can proceed with the signature process. The important documents are all the required leave-behind materials that you would give any applicant for long-term care, whether it be in person or electronically. So it's the outline of coverage, it's the things you should know, it's the potential rate increase disclosure, it's the NAIC shopper's guide. Even the guide to Medicare is up here as well. It's a 140-page long PDF. So your client has to open that PDF completely. You can see it's taking a little bit of time to paint across my screen. They can save it to their desktop if they so wish for future reference or reading, but Mutual just wants to make sure that this particular link has been clicked on and the PDF has been opened all the way. You can't go halfway and then quit. So we'll give it just a minute here. The overall process of completing an application is pretty darn slick. When I prepared this application this morning for today's webinar, Of course, I answer all the questions the right way where I didn't need to type in any additional information, but it took me all of 10 minutes. Most agents, the average time on an e-app with a client is usually about a half hour to 45 minutes, not too bad. Okay, so that first PDF is now open. It's all that stuff on the back of the app book that you're used to seeing. So I click out of that window, go to the second hyperlink. This is a real quick 2-pager, takes no time to open. Click out of that, and now I can put the check marks where I agree to consent to use electronic signatures, and I agree and I want to apply for coverage. And now the button is no longer grayed out, and I can sign the application. You are now presented with the real app. This is the fully completed application, just like you see it in paper. You have a couple of options up here. I can hit the next button, and it will take me through page by page, so you can afford your client the ability to go through page by page, and they can read and verify that all the answers are that are the way in which you guys talked about during your Join Me session. Or if I'm pretty confident that everything's completed to my satisfaction, I hit the button labeled Next Signature. So it will just skip to the next page that has to be signed. In the mutual app, the first page I'm brought to is it's page 3 of the personal worksheet. Very simple highlighted area with a little gray button labeled Sign. I click on that, and it will, here's my digital signature by Joe Cool. It's going to date timestamp it and give you the IP address of the computer that was used to sign it. And it's okay to have the IP address of both the applicant signatures and your signature be identical. So I just go Next Signature again. It should take me to the 5% compound rejection in the benefit selections page. Sign that. Hit Next Signature. This is the agreements and acknowledgement page. Sometimes you may have to scroll down. This is the HIPAA form. Again, all these pages should look very familiar to all of you who have written the mutual product. Here's that, whoops. Okay. And notice here's where it did a kind of a scripted signature. Oh, wow. I've already signed this. Oh, I think what it did here is I messed up. Okay, interesting, I'll report this. The next place I had to sign was the special HIPAA form just for you, the agent. And when I'm finished, there's a new button up here labeled Finished. You're not finished until you hit the Finish button. 90% of agents going through the app for the first time have experienced problems with this where their client said, well, I've already signed the application. And you're showing it, and I'm seeing it as being not signed. It's still out there for signatures. More times than not, it's because the client has not hit the actual Finish button. So when you click the Finish button, that means that you've completed the signature process. And now that the applicant has completed the signing process, you can go through and sign where you're supposed to sign as the agent. So I have to sign the personal worksheet as the agent. Like I said, sometimes you have to scroll down the page to get to the place where you sign. And the last place I sign is the producer page. And again, you have to hit the button label Finish to complete the process. So once it's all signed, you'll see now it's signed and ready to submit. And your button you will see here will not read Submit to Mutual, but it will read Submit to Back Office. And when you hit Submit to Back Office, that means you send it to us here at AIM. And we do keep an eye for applications coming in. I primarily am the person who checks for those throughout the day. I usually check first thing in the morning, midday, and late afternoon. And if I see an application that is up there in good order, I'll go ahead and submit it. One area we see a pretty consistent mistake being made is the way in which the application is presented to you, the e-app, to complete information. People oftentimes get the first and last name reversed, so that I'll see an app from Cool Joe, and I know that's not right. So I may call you up and say, hey, you've got an application up there for Joe Cool, but you put him in as Cool Joe. So before I submit it, I'm going to go, I think you should get back up on the application, hit the edit, make the correction. You'll have to go all the way back through the signature process again, and then submit it back to me, but that will save you a lot of heartache down the road because all the signatures in that application will be backwards, and it may offer you a challenging time in getting an application through. So that's the app process, pretty darn simple. What I think we're ready to do, Mike, is I'll start from the bottom if you want. We'll start unmuting people. If you have us on a speakerphone, please mute us off, please. And we'll open it up for any questions anybody may have. So are there any questions about the electronic app or the process at all? Okay, if there are no questions, we'll wrap this puppy up. Thanks everybody for joining us today. On behalf of Mike and Dave here at AIM, we appreciate you taking the time, and we'll let you get on about your day. Have a great one. Take care.